Hello, and thanks for joining me for this video on an introduction to mark making. It's broadly aimed at Year 7 Grade 6 students, but really anyone can give this a go. So grab your pencil and your paper and let's begin. For this mark making experiment, we'll be using a 2B pencil. And that's indicated at the tip of the pencil where the orange area is. It says what grade pencil it is. You can get lots of different grades of pencil, ranging all the way from H pencils to B pencils. But as an artist, we tend to use B pencils because they're a lot softer and give us a nice, rich, dark tone. So we'll start by looking at different types of mark making. And to do that, I'm going to, first of all, divide my page into quarters. Now, I don't mind if you don't use maths to do this. You could just simply take your ruler and divide up your page, because you might not do it the same as me. It might be that you choose to do a tiny bit larger or a tiny bit bigger, but I'm going to try and divide it fairly evenly so that I've got my quarters that I can look at today. So I'll put my ruler to one side, and in my first quarter I'm going to be looking at different types of line. So my first quarter I'll be looking at different types of line. Now, what do you think different types of line could be? Well, first of all, I'm going to start by just doing a simple horizontal line. Then I've got a diagonal line. We've got a vertical line. Let's get more interesting with our lines then. Could we do a dashed line? We could have dotted line. We could have a wiggly line or a wavy line. Do something very similar again, but get a little bit bigger with those waves. How about a nice jagged, zigzaggy line? See, mine there is going all the way to the edge of that quarter. Could do a line that's a little bit of a wiggly line that comes right down to the side there. I think my final line might be again that jagged line, but actually parallel to each other. So that's my first quarter completed. Now for my next quarter, I'm going to look at shapes. Now, shapes are what happen when lines join together and create something else. So I'll start with some ordinary shapes that we know quite well. We've got our circle, our square. Go for a nice rectangle as well. Maybe I feel like doing a few of those. We're going to experiment with a couple of triangles. Again, you can overlap them if you want to. You can make them small, you can make them nice and big. It's entirely up to you, but this area is just for you to experiment with any types of shapes that you know. You might know some mathematical shapes. So you might know a hexagon. You might know other different sided shapes. Now, since we're using our 2B pencil, we kind of want to know what the full capacity of it can be. So the way that we do that as artists is we do something called a tonal scale. And I'll write that down first of all at the top of my third box. And the way that I like to practice using my pencil and know how dark or how light it can get is through using this scale. So first of all, I'm going to press quite hard with my pencil to start off with, and I'm going to then release that pressure slightly on my wrist, which means my tone should get a little bit lighter. I want to try and get as light as possible before all you can see is that tiny, tiny, very, very faint line on the page. I might want to try that at a different angle, just so I get a feel of how I'm using my pencil as well. So my grip, I need to make sure that my grip is quite good and quite consistent. So I'm going to move my fingers slightly more to the middle of my pencil. And again, I'll press really, really hard to start with. And then loosening that pressure. Keeping that same stroke though. Right the way through to where it's barely touching the page at all. And that's your full range of tone that you can achieve with a 2B pencil. Now the final box that we've got here, we're going to experiment with combining a few different methods of mark making to make something appear 3D, because ultimately in drawing we might draw something that is in front of us, and actually we want that to not look so flat, we want it to look 3D, as if you could touch it, almost as if you see it on the page. It's not just a line drawing, but it's something a bit more, with a few more dimensions. So we're going to turn a circle into a sphere. And how are we going to do that? So I'm going to start by drawing a freehand circle, and you'll notice I'm starting by not even putting my pencil on the paper, but in my mind and with my hand, the movement, I'm having a go at drawing this pencil freehand circle. And that's my circle to start with, and I'm going to imagine that there's a light coming from this sort of area. So if the light's coming from this sort of area, it means this side of the circle or the sphere that we're creating is going to be a lot darker. So I'm going to start by building up the tone quite dark on this one side of my circle. You'll see my direction is fairly consistent. So although it's a circle, it's an oval shape, a sphere as we've said, I'm still keeping quite consistent with how I'm producing my marks. And it is tricky, it is really, really tricky to actually draw the circle in the first place. And then to add tone to it is also slightly harder. But it just takes practice. And that's the best bit of advice that I can give you. Practice, practice, practice. So it's getting lighter and lighter, because as I've already identified, I want the light source to be coming from there. I don't need to draw anything there. I can just imagine it. If you prefer, you could draw an arrow. That's up to you. My aim now is to make sure that that is as dark as it possibly can be. Okay, so that edge is nice and dark. And again, your pencil mark is as even as it can be. I'm just now smoothing mine out, blending it a little bit further, because I can see that there's a few directions that maybe I'd like to just smooth out a little bit. Now, what makes this even more complete is the presence of a shadow. So, I'm just going to draw my line to start with. It's just a tiny, an oblong shape, just to make sure that that now to me tells me it has a surface. It is a solid shape. Remember, we talked about going from the shape to something that's more solid and 3D. And I'm just going to finish off the areas there, just to, again, like I said, Bit of a perfectionist, I like to make things look as even as possible. Again, it just comes with practice and time. And that's how we turn a circle, so something like this, into something that's a bit more 3D and into a sphere. And that's your introduction to mark making using this 2B pencil. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Make Explore Art for more tips and tutorials, and I hope to see you next time.